Platoon.
Platoon,
man. That movie is probably one of my favorites of all time. I will never forget the first time I watched it. Was actually the night before the first time I ever went paintballing. So it stands out in that sense because, like, usually when you watch a war movie, you're so separated. You know, you're in the comforts of your couch, you're eating popcorn, drinking soda or whatever. Like, you're not really experiencing any life or death, and nor are you when you're paintballing.
No.
But you're also in the jungle, and you realize how fucking terrifying that must have been to just be milling about, and next thing you know, an all-out firefight blows out just at any moment. Like, it really resonated with me how scary that whole concept is. Like, the scene when Charlie Sheen's character is supposed to be on the night watch, and he tags the guy in that's supposed to wake up, and he doesn't, and that's when he notices the guy's creeping around the bush. Like, that's actually hauntingly terrifying to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like you had all the responsibility in the world, and, like, you trusted the wrong guy, and yet all the blame still laid on you.
Yeah.
Because of that guy's incompetence or lack of ability.
Exactly. It really, like, I was at that age, I think I was like 15 or 16, where you're starting to actually grasp, like, how fucked things could have been in the past. It was also, I think, tied into the fact that our dad was in Vietnam around the time he was 17. So I was, 2 years away from being that age and actually witnessing what was going on. I mean, he was an Air Force guy, so a much different situation, but regardless, it's war. It's gnarly, it's grisly, and that movie shows it, you know, totally unfiltered.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the gnarliest of the gnarliest. But I think, like, my favorite part about outside of that was that you get to see so much humanity in the characters. Like, when you look at all the different types of archetypes present with each figure, like, it really nails, like, real life to me. Like, that's a war, you know, that's a whole different situation, but soldiers are made up from people all over the country. Like, they're not all from the same neighborhood. They don't all have the same interests. Like, they come from all over, and they all are forced into a horrible situation together, and they find a way to get through it.
Kind of like work.
It's very much like work. Only the difference is, you know, it's not life and death at work, but still, like, you're going to have your cowards like John C. McGinley. You're going to have, you know, your cliques that are present all throughout that movie. You have just the guys like Charlie Sheen's character. I thought was interesting is they make a lot of subtle hints about how he was a college kid.
Yeah, he was there by choice, and everybody thought he was fucking nuts.
Yeah, and I mean, you do see that, like, in work situations. There's always, like, that guy that you find out is, like, way more qualified to be doing what he does, and everybody wonders, like, what the hell is with him. But people get into things for different reasons. Sometimes it's source of honor, like it is in that movie. Sometimes it's just how the cards play, you know, whatever. But, like, I think that just each character in there had so much backstory without really having to do or say much.
Yeah, they did a very good job, like, getting the point across for a lot of the characters in very subtle, very efficient ways. Like, you came to know so many of them in, like, just a couple lines of dialogue. Like, Johnny Depp's character he had some Vietnamese speaking ability, so you knew he was a little bit more worldly. And I think during I guess it's the nod to the My Lai massacre sequence, he was objecting, so you could tell that he wasn't on the same page with a lot of the other guys who were all blood and guts and fury.
I think actually one of the perfect example of what you're describing is Bunny.
Fuck, Kevin Dillon.
There's a scene when they're having, like, both, like, camps, like, because there's the two major cliques in it. There's kind of the stoner hippie guys who are just kind of forced over there.
Yeah,
and
there's the Barnes camp and the Elias camp.
Exactly. I mean, that's really clear that there's two different camps, and the Barnes camp is, like, very just staunch, very, like, conservative.
Yeah. I think there was a few, like, Confederate flags up in there.
Yeah. And then you have Junior, the one black guy in that whole group that they allow in, because all the rest of the Elias camp are minorities mainly, and, you know, a few of the more liberal guys.
Yeah.
And Bunny just looks at Junior and he goes, "Hell yeah, nothing better than the Indy 500." And Junior just gives him this look like, what the fuck are you even talking
What planet are you from?
Like, he just throws it out there as if this is, like, a known fact to the entire universe.
Yeah.
That, like, you know, the Indy 500 is the greatest day of the year. And it's just so perfect because that's literally it. It's like, you know, two guys who have nothing in common who have to rely on each other to survive.
Yes, they have to make it work. But weird aside, is Kevin Dillon a good actor or a bad actor? Because I felt like he had a particular type of bad acting in that film that actually made it work. But I don't think he's a good actor.
That's a brilliant question because even his like most prominent role is him playing a parody of himself.
Oh, God.
So that's really hard to say.
I mean, like, aside from Platoon and, like, I know he was big on Entourage or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, aside from that, like, I always think of him as the kid with the Ronnie James Dio hair and the blob. That saved the day with his dirt bike or whatever.
I love the 80s.
Anyway.
That's a fascinating point. I'll have to get back to you on that. I actually think anybody who's willing to make as much fun of himself as he has, like I give a nod to.
Okay.
Just because I think that takes a special person to be able to realize this character was clearly written about me.
Okay.
And embrace it. Much like I think Michael Keaton did with Birdman. Even though like they claim it wasn't really based on him, but come on. I mean, regardless though, I think the other thing that stood out with Platoon is Elias is probably one of my favorite characters I've ever encountered in cinema.
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I say I haven't tried to model a lot of my own personality after aspects that he displays in that. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that he's so honorable that they even mention how he's had opportunities to leave the war.
Yeah.
But his number one concern is helping out, you know, all his fellow soldiers, his fellow men. You know, I think that's something like he really cares. And it shows, but then he also has that kind of rascally side that just wants to do everything on his own, and you know,
when he has to separate from the group, he's the first one to volunteer. But
yeah, he's cocky as shit. I mean,
I mean, he feels at home. It's like part of that. I mean, part of it's loyalty, but another part of it is just feeling that you're in your element. It's like I understand this jungle, this chaos better than I do, you know, working a desk or whatever.
Yeah, and that's what's so fascinating. Like when you make that comparison, you were kind of saying with work, where you see so much of that in the Barnes camp.
Yeah,
where Barnes is honestly like even Elias kind of defers to him. Like that guy's clearly the most qualified to understand the war situation. Mm-hmm. He's a brilliant soldier and tactician. He's just grisly as fuck.
Well, he's playing numbers games. He's playing strategy, not tactics. He's saying, this guy's a liability. He actually may be useful to me dead.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, you know, the scary part of war is that comes into play. And you see the converse of him with the lieutenant. I can't recall his name, but he's the clean-cut guy who was college educated and sent over there with a bunch of bright, shiny uniform and everything. And he's clueless. Yeah, like once things start happening, he has no idea how to handle it. He ends up napalming his own guys.
Well, that's where the, you know, textbook knowledge without experience doesn't go hand in hand.
Yeah, which is such a major part of that film. Yeah, it's just, you know, look, there's what you think you know doesn't apply here. I mean, sadly, that's why we lost that war, but that's an aside. But, but that's the reality of it that was something our father always really stressed was, you know, it was just different. Yeah. There is no blueprint for how things go. Like, people don't follow the rules, especially when you're invading their country. So,
I mean, they were doing kind of what we were doing when we were trying to form our nation. Like,
absolutely.
I mean, you throw the rule book out the window, and you know the redcoat guys are, you know, marching in formations, and our guys are hiding in the bushes doing whatever it takes. Yeah,
but now that being said, like, how would you compare like Platoon, which was, you know, obviously it was a classic film, with was it 13 Hours in Benghazi?
Ooh, I feel like Platoon was made in the 80s.
Yeah.
Like, at least a decade after we had left Vietnam, you know, tail between our legs, all that business. The Benghazi thing, part of what struck me about that story is that there's the way it's framed. It's presented in such a way that there's a lot of, like, American patriotism in it. But to me, the thing that stuck out is that the people in it are actually mercs. They're contractors. Yeah, they just happen to be from America. defending American, intelligence personnel.
And I would even make the argument, actually, like, that's what I liked about it, that, like, it didn't really feel like it was even stressing that they were American. It was just that these are normal human, and much like Elias and Barnes, like, they're just more comfortable and those type of people to keep their shit together. I actually liked it. I thought, like, it did a good job of just kind of showcasing, like, when countries are in turmoil and trying to figure out what they're doing, you do see separation in ideals and people going both ways. They didn't just make, everyone into an extremist. Like, you saw a lot of people actually were on their side and wanted to help. They just didn't really know how. And then there were people who were just so used to it being a war zone, like the two farmers that you constantly see with their just herding their sheep while, violence is escalating everywhere.
One thing that I thought they did pretty well is there was a lot of repetition about nobody knew who was an enemy and who wasn't. Like there was a whole lot of uncertainty because it was just a really chaotic situation, and like it's known that the CIA guys and the contractors aren't exactly welcome in that environment. So you're looking at several different groups of belligerents who you can't even tell if they're coordinating with each other.
Well, and that was something too you saw, like, in Black Hawk Down too, like instances where it's like you can't tell what's really going on in the streets. Black Hawk Down I didn't enjoy as much because it was a little more about the all-American soldier thing, and I feel like the difference is, like, you watch the Benghazi movie, and, throw all the political bullshit aside. I think they did a great job of separating that part of it. Really what it shows you is just, like, look, these are 6 of the most elite soldiers on Earth with the best military technology at their hands. There's a reason they can wipe out 1,000 people in a night. Like, it has nothing to do with, anything other than, it isn't Risk. You don't roll dice and see who wins. It's when you're that much more well-trained versus a bunch of farmers who happen to cross some weapons, that's what's going to happen. They kind of show that in Black Hawk Down, except for they portrayed it, I felt like, more of, like, from a victim angle. Like, can you believe we lost 30 people or whatever it was? I mean, don't mean to offend. Like, it's unfortunate, and I feel sad for anyone who lost their life in a military operation. But the fact of the matter is, at the end credits, they say we killed, 2,000 people?
Yeah, the numbers were insane.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it's like kind of like, okay, I think whatever you did there, you won. Like,
well, I mean, officially, I think they didn't, but, like, in terms of sheer numbers, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, well, and that's the gnarly aspect when you're looking at some of those things. That part just stood out to me. Again, I have a very sheltered life because of these military operations that much stronger individuals have had to undertake on my behalf. So I am forever grateful for all that aspect of it. I just look at it at the end, the way the film was portrayed. It, yes, it's a shame that these guys lost their life, but they did do some fucking damage in response.
Yeah. I mean, it's the equivalent to, like, claiming you poked the hornet's nest when you're a bear that's, like, actually trying to eat the hornet's nest.
Right. Yeah, that's like, exactly it. That's exactly it. It was just kind of like...
It's like, I was just, batting at it, and then they started stinging me, so I ate the whole nest.
That's a perfect example. But, like, I just felt like the Benghazi thing, like, I think it was interesting watching it as mercs. It made you feel for them almost more in a way.
It's honor the man, not the flag.
Exactly.
It's like honor. It's a classic few stood against many story. It's Thermopylae. It's
Well, and I think too, ever since the American Sniper debacle, where that caused such a shitstorm because of how it was utilized as more propaganda.
Well, I mean, we're in the midst of it. Like, it's here. It's a trend.
Yeah.
Like,
but
the Benghazi movie debuted in Cowboy Stadium. Like, it's a real thing. Like,
yeah. But I think that at least in that one, it's like these were just kind of guys who were paid to be anonymous. They made a movie about them. Great, you can worship him there. You can, I'm sure people felt better knowing that the guy from The Office is defending our American ideals.
John Krasinski for America, although he missed his chance to be Captain America.
Yeah, he blew that one.
He's too tall. Like, he wouldn't fit. Like, he's bigger than Thor. Like, it wouldn't look right. Like, anyway. But I mean, I'll say this. I did actually kind of like 13 Hours. Like
I liked it a lot.
I enjoyed it a lot as like a visceral experience. I thought it was good filmmaking. Like it was a little long in the tooth. Like it could have used some cuts here and there, but very good cinematography. Like really high tension. Like that's actually, I thought that was really admirable how like the firefight didn't start in earnest until much later in the film. Like, most of it's just kind of like hairy situations where it's like, I don't know if they're gonna start. Like this stuff's piling up, but it didn't really turn into an action film.
Yeah,
like in earnest until way later. But it was way better than the Alamo, like the Disney Alamo movie, anyway. Like, but it's essentially, it ties back to that American, you know, folklore. I mean, the Alamo was a real thing, but there's, you know, a large segment of the population that still use that phrase, remember the Alamo, and it's basically they're referencing 300. It's the American equivalent.
Yeah, 300 did really just take on something.
That is a behemoth. Like them bros, they latched onto that. Like your average guy probably knows quotes from that movie, and like
300 and Braveheart, man.
Braveheart needs a resurgence. I feel like people are starting to forget about it.
I don't know, man. I just remember our high school football team. They had like somebody had edited together only the violent parts of Braveheart.
Oh,
and the football team would watch it before games.
Oh,
like that's bro culture right there.
There you go. Jesus.
No, but it's like, I don't know, man. Like when I think about like looking at like that character Elias, like there is that sense, like those are things that like I've strived to try to model my personality to be.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, you want to be honorable. You still want to have a sense of humor about things. You want to be open to other ideals. Mm-hmm. You know, you'll deal with a shit situation, try to make the best of it. Like these are all things I factored in. I mean, I feel like that's a worthy transition out of just viewing Optimus Prime as my favorite, like
well, I mean,
my role model.
I was about to say, pretty much every trait you're describing, it's like, that sounds familiar.
Well, and Optimus Prime was even more of an example. Like that's why I was so offended. Like as much as I like Michael Bay's take on the Benghazi thing, his Transformers suck.
Yeah, like there's. I mean, the first one was somewhat excusable because it was a new thing.
Yeah,
and the more I think about it, the more I realize that movie is basically Small Soldiers. Like,
it is.
Like it's basically the same script just applied to Transformers, and I feel like the script for Small Soldiers probably started as the script for Transformers.
I will say the arrival to Earth scene, was perfect.
Yeah, that piece of music, and I don't know, something about the leisurely editing, like it really.
I think it was the enthusiasm of it too. Like I think it just nailed. Like that's what you wanted when you were a kid growing up, is to experience that. Like just sense of like awe at how big these things are, about seeing something actually turn into a real car. Like it just nailed like that sense of wonderment you had when you were imagining your world back when you had an imagination.
And then they started talking.
No, then Jazz started breakdancing. That's when it ended.
Then Jazz, says "sup little bitches" or whatever. And then Bumblebee is a radio.
I like that little.
And
that was an interesting
why was
thing.
Ironhide British? Like, explain this to me. Like, Ironhide was supposed to be. When are we gonna start busting Deceptor chops?
Yeah, I was disappointed with that too.
I'm like, what? Like, what are you doing? I mean, I'm guessing it's to make him distinct, and I realize it was the same voice actor. Like Optimus Prime and Ironhide were the same guy in the cartoon, but I don't know if you're gonna get anything right. Like, get that right.
Well, it's also the international audience too.
Yeah, I understand that better now that I'm a little older, that telling things in broad strokes is important when there is a language barrier. Like giving Ratchet an intellectual, somewhat British accent, it gets it across that he's supposed to be smart.
Well, and it's very important to, especially big budget flicks like that, where you can sell to a nation where English is not as well understood with a lot of special effects.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like, I got to see, what was it, Dark Knight over in Bali, Indonesia, which the only reason that was carried was because it had a ton of special effects, that people could just sit back and watch. They didn't care about, the dialogue.
Eye candy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's huge for big budget flicks. That's why it's unfortunate now we have things like Jurassic World, which I will forever come back to, because that movie is the epitome of why I hate modern cinema right now.
Explain.
At least the big budget flicks, because it is just so, that was just so designed to be just like the shittiest B movie quality in acting, in writing, in everything. But it had great special effects.
Yeah.
It roped you in, and it had nostalgia tied behind it.
Yeah.
And you combine those two things, and that's what sells tickets.
What makes me sad is that I don't think of it, like, I categorize it in my brain as not a bad film. It's just, for the life of me, it doesn't, I can't remember it. And I remember, like, everything. Like,
I mean, I'm one of those idiots who still has cable. And part of the reason I still have cable is because I like to occasionally be flipping around at odd hours in the morning and find Law and Order. And especially Criminal Intent, my fiance and I love. And that has Vincent D'Onofrio in it. I love Vincent D'Onofrio. I had no clue he was in that movie. Or I did when I watched it, but like I had forgotten completely.
Oh my god.
Until you had said something recently.
Yeah, he was in that movie. He had a couple of pretty big scenes. Like, he was the catalyst for the Raptors going after the, I-Rex or whatever you want to call it. Indominus Rex.
I mean, it was such just a joke. A T-Rex tag teaming with a bunch of raptors to take down a mutated dinosaur?
Well, that whole finale sequence is the equivalent to a little kid just like grabbing his action figures and slamming them into each other. And it's like I feel like the director just kind of like consulted his children or something before he started the project.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that's why I hate it. I get it.
It gave you exactly what you wanted.
Yeah, yeah.
But that wasn't maybe the best thing.
Yeah, exactly.
But it really did. Like, in terms of like, I think of it in terms of Fast Five.
Yeah,
Fast and Furious 5. So when that movie was coming out, I found out that The Rock was cast as a potential adversary or villain type character. And as soon as I heard that, I put on my thinking cap and was like, what is the best thing that you could do with The Rock? It's like, have him run into Vin Diesel. And then the movie gave me that. And I was ecstatic. I was like, yes, this is the best movie ever. And in that case, it was great. But in the case of Jurassic World, I will go on record and say that I called that finale. Like, the way that movie was marketed, they didn't show the T-Rex at all. And I had a feeling. I was like, they're going to restore the glory to the T-Rex because he's still on the logo. And he got shafted in the third one. And, they're banking on the people who were kids when the first one came out being the ones to take their kids to this fourth one. And it's like, what was the best moment in the first movie? Let's do that again for a new generation. And in that case, yeah, it's like, if I was an adult after, being a kid, which I was, except I don't have kids, that is exactly what I would have wanted and expected, and I got that, and yet for some reason I'm not happy.
Well, I think it's just because it did the bare minimum. And that's the part that bothers me. Like, it was so safe. Like, it just stuck to just the literal bare minimum of what do people all want to see? They want to see raptors, they want to see T-Rex, and ideally they'd like to see them where they can be the good guys, in a completely unrealistic fashion, because that was always the dream as a kid.
Yeah.
You have your pet T-Rex that beats up on Bebop and Rocksteady when Leonardo's incapacitated. You know? That's just how it was when you grew up. But now, I guess it's just, my concern is like too much of giving you what you want. Like, I like when director says like, okay, yeah, that's fine, there's a formula here, but I need to throw in some shit to mix it up, keep it interesting, throw you off your game. You don't want to do what you said you did with that film, which is predict exactly what's going to happen.
Yeah.
You need scenes like in Platoon where Keith David gets to actually leave the war early.
Yeah,
right before the
guy who's basically saying 2 days till retirement from the beginning of the movie.
Yeah, no, you would expect in a modern movie that helicopter would blow up on the way out. He'd get shot by a sniper. Something would happen, or they just wouldn't let him go.
Yeah,
they'd flat out deny, his ability to escape a horrible conflict that's on the horizon. You know? But you need kind of those things that just throw you for a loop, because that's realistic. Like, sometimes shit just comes out of nowhere where it's like, wait, what?
Well, I don't know. Like, if director's intent is a conversation that comes up a lot lately, now that budgets are so incredibly astronomical and out of control. Like, I didn't get the sense that, I think it was Colin Trevorrow was the name of the guy who directed it.
Okay.
And he did a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which was an indie movie that I didn't see.
That was based off that Craigslist.
Yeah. Anyway, he got, the mother of all promotions, and got handed the one of the biggest movies of the summer. But I didn't get the feeling that like he wasn't allowed to, like he was disallowed from doing anything. Like I felt like I could feel like a voice through the way the film was presented. Like the fanboy character that was kind of representative of the Jurassic Park fandom. Like I felt like that was kind of, it came from him maybe. And then there were just some weird oddities, like that death sequence, that protracted death sequence with the
that was gnarly.
That was horrifying, and it came out of nowhere. Like, and it was such a minor character. Like, I guess she was kind of snooty and kind of mean to the kids a little bit, but she wasn't.
It was a really prolonged death sequence.
Yeah, I mean that felt like Spielbergian spite killing. That's what I call it. Where anybody who's a jerk in a Spielberg movie always gets their comeuppance, usually in really horrible fucking ways, and it kind of felt like that. Like it reminded me of in The Lost World. This guy was actually a cool guy, but it was Eddie, the mechanic guy.
Yeah,
Eddie had like the worst. I think that might top my list of like protracted awful death scenes. Like he spent like 10 minutes trying to haul up that trailer in the rain. He slipped in the mud. He was all by himself. He hooked up a winch. He dropped the winch. He picked it back up. He got in the car, and then 2 T-Rexes show up, and they tear the car apart, and then they tear him in half.
Well, and then you have the lawyer on the toilet. I mean,
but that was quick.
Yeah, he still got bitten in half.
Yeah, I mean,
after sitting on a toilet, mind you, too.
I guess, but that was quick. Eddie had a struggle.
No, Eddie was pretty brutal.
Eddie had to run a marathon and then get shot in the kneecaps and left to bleed.
Yeah, maybe there is that. I mean, I think that there were some aspect. I think that some of the dinosaurs that were the lesser known that he got to utilize were probably some of his creative components to it. Like particularly that water one that they really emphasized.
The mosasaur.
Yeah.
That had a lot of moments. Like, like for something confined to a water tank in the middle of the park, like it showed up more than a few times.
Yeah, no, I think that was like one of the things, and I think that like
it was. That thing was basically the pit for Mortal Kombat.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to finish 2 major characters, the nanny lady and the Indominus Rex.
That is true.
Finish him.
And I guess, that is something they're trying to do. Like, it's fascinating. You see it already with, like, the internet.
Yeah.
Like, we're in this weird era where you have all these major businesses that have been established forever, and now this thing, the internet, took off. And a lot of them are struggling to know how to utilize them because you have a lot of very wealthy, affluent, intelligent people running these things who honestly probably don't know as much about how to operate computer systems as maybe your average 16-year-old. I mean, it's a scary thought, but that's, I think, a realistic concept. Like, there's a reason they're stressing so much. They want coders, they want developers, like, because, people are trying to figure out how to best utilize this stuff, how to build networks, what's a fad, And so I think you're seeing it in Hollywood, like, they're turning over some of these major franchises to these younger directors in the hopes that they're in tune with what the real fans really want. I think that's what DC keeps fucking up with Snyder.
Yeah.
With just thinking that this guy has a clear concept of what people seek in comic book stuff. And I feel like they just keep failing left and right because it's not really jiving with the reality of it.
This whole, like, cinematic universe showdown we're seeing with, like, basically it's Disney Marvel versus Warner Brothers DC. We're seeing like 2 radically different philosophies colliding. And
of course.
I think it's really fascinating actually because Disney has gone the like homogenized route where they're hiring guys I don't think purely based on talent. I think it's ability to adhere to specific aesthetic, like a specific feel. Because we've seen a lot of Marvel movies, but we haven't seen that many that are radically different from each other.
No, they're practically all the same.
If you look at a lot of the concept art, even, it looks like the same art team is working on these films. Like,
which is
it's a coordinated effort because it's a good thing. Like,
it's brilliant when you're gearing towards the Infinity Gauntlet thing too.
I mean, think about it. It's like, do you want 50 designers to design the costumes for your characters, or do you want one guy in control of it all, making sure, hey, does Hawkeye look good next to Doctor Strange? Does Ant-Man's costume jive with Captain America's?
Right.
And so it's a coordinated effort. And I think it's really funny that the two brothers they have right now, their name escapes me at the moment, but they're the ones that have been directing the Captain America films. They come from a TV background.
Right.
And that's kind of how movies in general are kind of trending, is this long-form narrative style where think about what would be valued in a television director.
Yeah.
It's, can you make the first episode tie into the next episode, tie into the next episode? It's not so much can you present something fresh, unique. It's about can you put something out there that jives with everything else that's already out there. So these guys, I mean, they make great films. They're working from pretty good scripts, but they don't feel like unique. They don't feel like they have, you know, an artist's stamp on it. It doesn't feel like an auteur's project. Whereas DC went to the trouble to hire fucking Zack Snyder, who puts the same goddamn filters and the same costume style in like all of his movies. He clearly has a vision. Like, he clearly has a very unique, very personal style. You know what you're getting when you hire him, and it's like they put all their stock in him to carry the entire thing. Whereas Marvel, instead of choosing a director to do that, they have a guy, Kevin Feige.
Mm-hmm.
He's like the creative director.
Okay.
So he oversees all these projects. He doesn't direct any of the films though.
Okay. Huh.
And DC and Warner Brothers have Jeff Johns. I don't think he's been involved until very recently. He comes from a comics background. He's a DC author for the most part.
Yeah.
And it's like they're trying to catch up to Marvel and Disney. So basically what I'm saying is DC and Warner Brothers put their stock in a director.
Yeah.
A guy who creates the product. Whereas Marvel put their stock in the guy who conducts the orchestra.
Well, and it makes sense too, because Marvel has done this great job of taking. Because here's where my take on it. Snyder seems to have this vision of that, because, and I think it's the age range he's in, where seeing the really dark, gritty sides of all these characters you grew up on. You had kind of like the bubblegum ones when you were a kid, like reading them. But you knew there was darkness there, and now we're finally in a time where you can showcase it.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, they did that with the Batmans. Nolan, nailed that.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is it's gotten so gritty with things like Suicide Squad and all that, to where, I mean, Suicide Squad, I think the reason there was appeal was just because it was different. It wasn't because it was dark and gritty and all that. I think, honestly, it was just a different type of comic that wasn't just very much like why the Deadpool movie went over so well. Was just, it's something out of the ordinary, everything you were just describing. Yeah. Like the formula that's been created.
Well, consequently, Guardians of the Galaxy,
perfect example.
Very big hit that just happens to involve a bunch of characters not many people are familiar with, and it's directed by a guy who comes from Troma. So if anybody's going to make an off-the-wall project, it's going to be that guy.
Well, and like you had explained to me before, was how they had adapted so many of those characters. Like, most of them were not similar to the way they're showcased in the comics.
They were molded in service of the script.
Right, and probably for the better, I would assume.
In service to that particular film, yeah. Like, they made the film better by being the way they were.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. It's like, DC, it seems to be like they just keep getting darker and darker trying to mold things, but they're fucking it up in the process. I mean, I heard that The Killing Joke is, like, horrifically disturbing.
Ugh.
Like, they made it just, it's all about, it literally centers around the sexual assault stuff. And that's so gnarly, and they added sequences to, like, just make it even bigger, and they have scenes where there's apparently, like, prostitutes, like, talking about how awful the Joker is, and it's like, wait a minute, you took this character that is secretly beloved by almost everyone. You just made him into one of the worst people imaginable. Like, that's not what people want. People like the charisma of the Joker. They don't want him to be as evil as he's portrayed. They want him to be the guy that Batman kind of has this forever thing, like we're just going to always be, you commit the crime, I thwart it,
Yeah, and I can never truly finish this fight with you.
We need each other, kind of thing.
Yeah, you justify my insanity and I justify yours.
No, and that was like even like kind of the end of like Arkham City, the video game, where it's kind of like when you do see the Joker perish, and it's a comic book, so it doesn't matter, he'll come back.
Yeah,
but it's still like that sequence of being like, that doesn't feel right. You need the Joker. Like, but part of the reason you need the Joker, I mean, half that game you're trying to save the Joker.
Well, I feel like I have to credit DC for this, their film department or whatever. Not the animated projects. I actually kind of stepped away from those a few years ago. I used to watch all of them.
Yeah.
I don't know. The past few years, it kind of dawned on me that they were taking these like familiar titles, like The Killing Joke, or Batman and Superman, like based on iconic comics, and I don't know, they just made them too punchy. Where it's like you took something that was noteworthy because of its writing. The art was in service to the writing, and when it gets to the DC animated, straight to video movie format, just the punching gets dialed up to 11, and the script kind of gets like, oh, let's just take the good bits and write in a bunch of filler in between.
Right.
But when it comes to like the live action films, I do have to kind of credit them for, I don't know, like maybe they're banking on contrast or something being a selling point.
I mean, I really think that that's a big part of it. Is that
like Marvel's so bright that we need to be dark because being different might be our selling point at this point.
No, I think that's 100% it actually is. I think that they view it as Marvel clearly has turned all their characters into Disney animated characters.
Yeah.
And, DC is going for the, like, no, our guys are gritty. Because for the longest time, actually, it kind of flipped, I feel like. Because a lot of the DC characters I always associate growing up with were kind of, like, the older, like, wimpier, like, cartoony guys. Like, Superman is a perfect example. Like, he's clearly a character written for a different era that really doesn't exist anymore.
No, the best way I've heard it referenced was Marvel characters are the ones you relate to, and DC ones are the ones that you aspire to.
Yeah, that's perfect.
They seem like brighter, and like so many of the costumes are so garish and so obscene, and like I don't know, they come from a different time, even if they're a modern creation in some ways. But I feel like the movies, I mean, part of it has to be that Batman is a guaranteed moneymaker.
Yeah,
you can slap Batman on anything and it'll make money. And Warner Brothers knows this, especially since they've kind of fucked up with Superman too many times to count.
Yeah.
And but in some ways, in terms of like characterization, I do have to tip my hat that they're taking like weird chances, like not even ones that make sense, but they are taking chances, like the way they characterize Batman and Superman both in these most recent movies, which are not good movies, but their take on them, it's like, are you familiar with Elseworlds?
No.
So in the DC Comics, the Elseworlds imprint, it's kind of like how Marvel has their Max imprint.
Okay.
So Elseworlds just refers to like a non-canonical, like alternate universe story.
Yeah.
That's what these recent movies feel like to me. Is they feel like, hey, let's intentionally take something familiar and fuck it up beyond all recognition, just because we can.
Yeah.
Except the problem is they're trying to create a linear, far-reaching story that is supposed to appeal to the masses. It's like, having murder Batman probably isn't a good way to do that, and having super bizarre alien Superman that doesn't identify with other humans is kind of weird. But I feel like they should have taken that further, actually, with the Superman character.
I actually liked a lot of the ideas in Superman.
Yeah,
I just
in Man
hated
of
the
Steel,
execution. The trailer for that actually was one of my favorite trailers I've seen in a long time. And I love movie trailers.
Yeah.
More than most movies I watch. But I loved how they did the two different versions with Kevin Costner doing one and Russell Crowe the other. Like, I liked the way they kind of showcased him as this like all-American that clearly doesn't exist in this era, but he's still going to strive to do it because that's what Superman is. He's an icon of, perfection, essentially.
What I enjoyed, enjoyed is the wrong word. What I tried to latch onto as a promising element of Man of Steel was the notion of Superman as an alien.
Mm-hmm.
There's hints in the script. They never go into enough depth. It gets too punchy. It turns into Dragon Ball Z at the end. But before that, there's a lot of... they touch a lot on this where it's he is an alien. He doesn't identify with the people around him, and that makes him an exotic other. That makes him... as much as he wants to be the good guy, maybe he isn't, because how can you be a protector to people you can't identify with?
It reminds me actually of going back to the Transformers thing, the original cartoon.
Yeah.
One of the episodes that one of the very few episodes I actually remember, because let's be honest, it was a show you watch as a kid. You only retain so much of it.
Oh.
Well,
it depends on who you're talking to.
Sure.
I'm with you, but there's a lot of people listening that be actually.
Very true. But no, there's an episode where basically the humans realize that they're alien creatures and that they could take over the world if they wanted to.
Yeah.
And I think Megatron somehow is the one who plants the seed with all this, because that's the plot point. But ultimately, Optimus Prime, being the ultra perfect leader that he is, the idealist or whatever, he accepts that, that's how the humans feel. We're guests on this planet. We are aliens.
Yeah.
So, they're basically in the show, they're sent to fly into the sun and be executed.
Yeah, I remember
and
that
he
really
agrees to it because he says, okay, we tried to defend you and be good, but it wasn't good enough and you're scared of us, so I guess we got to adhere to this,
Yeah, he resigned himself to his fate, and he was correct. They are guests on the planet.
No, and that's only because he's such an honorable figure. I think it stood out to all that Japanese crap we grew up hearing about, of just honor to death and just whatever duty.
Yeah,
but
just,
and of course they end up finding out Megatron betrayed the humans, and they turn the ship around at the last second and all that.
They referenced that, I think, in the third live-action movie, where they get piled into the shuttle, because...
Yeah, that's right. They did kind of
and then
bring that up. So clearly it was a poignant episode, and, know...
If Michael Bay recognized this, oh, wait, someone might remember this. But, yeah, and then they, referenced the Challenger imagery. That was a little uncomfortable.
That was gnarly.
Yeah.
But they also had half Cybertron, which was kind of neat, too.
Yeah, that was cool. And then,
And then... Give me your face!
No, that was the second one.
Oh, okay.
The third one was, we will kill them all.
God, I hated that part. I hated that part so much.
Man,
that and the brutal executions.
Dude, 2 in a row. You took out Megatron.
As he's surrendering.
No, Megatron was fair game, I guess. But Leonard
I'm pretty
Nimoy...
sure he was offering him peace at that point.
Optimus Prime is a kill crazy savage in those movies. I don't know who decided that should be his character, but man, I like how by the fourth one he barely even talks anymore. He's just kind of there to spin around and chop things. And he killed Frasier. He killed Dr. Frasier Crane.
That's an amazing scene.
I like how he just offhand does it, where he
without even thinking.
He doesn't even know who he is. It's in the middle of a fight with not Blackout or whatever. But anyway, they're tumbling around, and he just kind of glances over his shoulder. He's oh, who's that? He just shoots him.
But also just his composure too. By the fourth one. I guess they're trying to play the whole, he's been worn down by the humans constantly wanting him to leave. But, when he hears about Ratchet dying and he just freaks out.
Yeah.
I don't even know why we talk about this movie. There's a sequence where a guy uses a car literally to jump kick a person. So, it's a terrible movie.
I don't know, I will say this, though. I remember it very well, and I don't remember Jurassic World that well.
Yeah, and that's the sad truth. At least Bay puts enough in there that keeps you intrigued. I think it helps that, again, Optimus Prime, at least in my case, was a character that, when I was a little boy, I I looked up to. Like, it was like, that's a hero to me. Like,
he was the high road figure. Like, he always tried to do the right thing. Like,
no, and that's why people get hooked on these characters.
Yeah.
Like, people get hooked on Batman because they feel like they're have this dark second part to themselves of, you know, they want to do the best, but then they also have their own things that they're ignoring in the process of, you know, you have people who look up to Superman, you know, Jerry Seinfeld, like, just like, he's the best. and that's just like him.
That's why Superman exists in the form he does, is because he has to be the best. Like,
yeah.
Like, I mean, sure.
Much like how Batman needs to be DC's version of Wolverine. Like, you need this brooding kind of dark guy to balance out all the cheery, idealistic guys from the franchises, you know? So, I mean, yeah, there's a reason we all follow the same sorts of movies over and over. I like war movies. Why? Platoon meant something to me, damn it. Most war movies had sequences that meant something to you, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, when you're dealing with war movies in particular, like, so much of it's based on archetypes, and they're all true.
Yeah,
because I mean, everybody that does it has their own experience, but there's just certain types of people that inevitably you will run across. And I mean, if like in watching Platoon, it's like you haven't been to war, you haven't been a soldier, and yet you've met those people.
Well, in
different circumstances.
I mean, part of it is to humanize them, and part of it is that these are based on, I mean, largely on memoirs. I mean,
yeah.
Oliver Stone was in the military, so that was a particularly personal one.
Platoon was like every major bullet point in the whole war. Like,
yeah.
Like, realistically, all those things wouldn't happen to one platoon.
But the reason, too, like, you know, like we were discussing earlier, like, a soldier, you only have so much time you spend with these guys. You don't really have a lot of conversation with them, so that's how you remember them, too. They kind of just become these archetypes. Very much like you have coworkers that you have maybe five conversations with the entire time you work together. And, you know, you just base your memories of them off of what you see, and, you know, by default we usually use archetypes. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's how your brain organizes things. It finds patterns and it says, oh, this guy's reliable, he goes in that pile, and you know, or these guys are assholes, I don't like them, they're going in that pile.
And I guess maybe that's why Jurassic World's not as memorable, because you can't compartmentalize, you know, dinosaurs. They can only do so much, and the more we learn about them through, like, archaeology and all, is a lot of them sucked.
Well, I mean, I could tell that they tried. Like, I got the feeling that I was being played a little bit. Like, and I object whenever that happens. Like whenever I get the sense that, like, I can see the strings being pulled, I say, no, I'm not going to respond to this. Like, purely out of spite. Good old Irish spite. I know what you're doing. You're trying to trick me, aren't you? But I saw, you know, the characterization of the raptors.
Yeah.
Like, even the way they were animated, I got the sense that they were meant to be, like, analogous to dogs.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like the way that they ran in that movie, it was a lot different from the way they moved in the previous movies, where they were more bird-like and more menacing. These ones had, you know...
Well, I think, like, in the first movies, because that's what I was saying, like, the more I hear about dinosaurs as I get older, like, they're not as cool as they were.
The less
like,
fascinating they get.
Yeah, they're just, like, kind of boring. Like T-Rex, the big scavenger with wimpy arms that, you know, he's basically a giant hyena. Like,
colored in Fruit Loop colored feathers.
Yeah, exactly. And then, like, and I think, like, a big part of the first one that people liked was the raptors played such a big part, because it was kind of emphasizing, like, hey, these were actually, like, the coolest dinosaurs. Like, these were the real predators.
They had a lot of personality while still, I don't know, they had, like, a coldness to them where it was very reptilian or bird-like.
Well, and they could fit into, like, the kitchen and things like that to make for more drama than the T-Rex, which is this big lumbering thing that, you know, they made them have some cool stuff, but, like, we grew up with the B movies, like the King Kongs and the Godzillas. You've seen a big lumbering creature knock stuff down.
You haven't seen an agile thing that's
your
open
size
doors
and but then I think with this one, it kind of was going more, like you were saying, it's like, no, these are the fantasy dinosaurs, like, and that was supposed to be the character. Like, I'm a dog, Chris Pratt, like, I'm basically a dog trainer.
Yeah, well, you know. Funny thing about Chris Pratt's character, I get the sense that there was, like, an inside joke on the set that he was basically playing a Chuck Norris character. Because if you pay attention to the things he does in that movie, like, what little I remember, I just remember him being exceedingly good at everything he did. Like, I was like, damn, like, that was a good shot.
Yeah, he was kind of like this perfect human being who chooses to be a crappy, like, I live in a shack.
He's like, yeah, I'm a beach bum, but I'm also super jacked and I can talk to raptors. Instead of defending America's freedom, I'm just going to be a dog handler.
I do love it when you can see a sense of... I think it's usually the writers, where they have like this ideal character in their mind where they just make them so great that it just keeps piling up. And
even his little mustache, I feel like it was an inside joke on the set or something. Like, I feel like...
I wouldn't be shocked.
Like, he just showed up like that and they're like, okay. Like, Chris Pratt, you're gonna be Superman.
No, I could definitely see that. And like I said, it's really funny when you see like characters just become like these superhuman creatures that can just adapt to anything. Like, that's why I like Vincent D'Onofrio on Law and Order Criminal Intent. Because he literally will just like walk into a crime scene and just like look at like a piece of furniture and just know exactly the era it was in, who carved it, and blah. It's like, how does he know all this? And it's like, oh, he's just perfect.
Because he's awesome.
Yeah,
Shut up.
There's a few episodes where he interacts with deaf people and he instantly starts doing sign language.
Whoa.
And it never explains why he knows sign language.
I need to start watching this.
Yeah, he's just like perfect in every way. It's very similar actually to True Detective with Matthew McConaughey's character.
Okay.
Where he's like, somehow he's a drunk, but he also is a perfect sniper and like knows how to be a super soldier and like knows all these special tactics that no one else does, and he knows all about religion and all these weird things. And
well,
you know,
you can call that like power fantasy. Like, some people,
that's what I think it is.
Some people argue that Batman and Superman in some ways are both representative of that, where Batman is the competent, capable man.
Yeah.
Where if you have enough training, if you have enough dedication, you can beat
money.
Yeah, I mean, his superpower is money. I mean, let's face it. But Superman, it's more like a childlike fantasy of like power fantasy, where it's like, you can't stop me from doing anything because I'm Superman. It's like, you can't tell me to go to bed because I'm Superman. But going back to Vincent D'Onofrio, have you seen the trailer for Magnificent Seven?
I have.
Did you see him throw that axe in that dude's back? Like, I want to see that movie almost purely based on that one shot from the trailer.
I've seen that, and I've seen clips from Daredevil. He's pretty interesting.
He's probably the best part of it.
I think he carries that, and I think that going back to the whole Marvel versus DC, I do think it's sneaky clever how Marvel's releasing these darker series on Netflix like that, where it's kind of separate from it's the children stakes, basically. Yeah. But it's like let's let some of this dark stuff out, but don't put it in a big feature film. Yeah, because then the kids are going to see it and they're going. And yeah, they did Deadpool, but even Deadpool's just kind of
that was also out of their hands to some extent. That was a Fox production.
Sure,
but yeah, I feel like they kind of dipped their toes into that a while ago. Mm-hmm. Not in earnest like they are now with the Netflix series, but like if you paid attention, if you saw it, the Punisher Warzone.
Yeah.
When the production logos are going up, it doesn't say Marvel like it does in most of the other ones. It says Marvel Knights. Uh-huh. They also did that for Ghost Rider 2. And part of that is like symbolic of them probably not having any confidence in these films. Like, maybe they'll watch it in Russia. It's like, they like guns, they like cars. It's like let's film it in Croatia. That'll be cheap. But I think the Marvel Knights thing was like, it's a way to distance yourself from it, where it's like, if it fails, which I think they both did, except maybe on DVD,
sure,
it doesn't hurt you.
That makes sense.
Oh, that wasn't us. That was those guys.
I mean, that makes total sense. It's
like Netflix. It's like, I mean, they haven't had a flop yet, but it's like, oh, that wasn't a mainstream Marvel production. That was those guys.
Sweep it under the rug, WWE style.
There you go. Gobbledygooker? That never happened.
Well, now that we brought up the gobbledygooker, it's probably about time to call it. So, thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, this was a fun one.
All right. This is Matt Hart and Trevor Hart for Salute to Arrogance. Thank you very much.
Good night.
All right, you two out. You downstairs. Guy with the beard, shave it or get out. You Weird dude. Adios. I don't even know how you got in here.
Kevin, look, it's
Hey,
not how...
you could just turn around.
I'm the director. I need to see your performance.
You don't need to see it. You'll feel it.
Yeah, well, I'm not feeling...
Oh, you're not. You know what? You're out. Let's go.